Well, I mean, that's certainly an interesting perspective, and there are lots of people who debate the efficacy of the austerity measures that have been taken. I have to say, from our perspective as a credit rating agency, whenever you see a sovereign running unsustainable deficits, that's clearly negative in terms of how we think about the rating. You know, we like to see debt dynamics come under control, but there is no magic number that we focus on that automatically leads to upgrades or downgrades. Our report, though, is less about the kind of fiscal position per se. It is in there because higher debt loads for sovereigns are one of the key risks that we see. And the fact that those debt loads are higher means that there's less space and capacity to respond if you need sovereign action going forwards. But it's more about the broader perspective on Europe and where we are in terms of if we see another downturn, what kind of factors could drive the depth and extent of any fallout from that downturn.
One other comment that drew my attention here is that of monetary policy, and that it's having increasingly less of an impact the longer the ECB keep rates at these very accommodative levels. Who do you think needs to pick up the slack here if it's not the ECB? What do governments need to be doing?
So the comment that we make in the report is around the efficacy of quantitative easing. And in particular, if you look at the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, the ECB, it looks like for every extra time you do QE, maybe the yield impact you get is a little bit smaller. We saw some very big market reactions when the Fed and the Bank of England in the US started QE. We similarly saw a more marked reaction when the ECB started. But over time, you know, as programs have been extended or ramped up, that subsequent impact on yields has been a little bit reduced, and that's why we talk about the declining efficacy. In terms of going forwards, you know, what we're really looking for, in part, is structural reforms. And one of the things we talk about in the report is, when you think about Europe, you know, we're still talking about a currency union without a fiscal union in the euro area, and that requires institutional reforms where governments pool their resources, you know, they agree on steps they want to take. And yet, we see increasing political fragmentation that makes that a little bit harder.
Let me just jump in. We've got a comment crossing on the wires, would you believe, just as you're talking, and we know how much of a fan of rating agencies that Salvini is in Italy. The Deputy PM is saying Italy's Salvini repeats that the government will not backtrack on the budget plan. So what we have is a government at loggerheads, not just the EU, but also ratings agencies. What does that mean for these reports that you deliver? And potentially, of course, Italy is on the track for a downgrade from your agency, which would mean potentially it could lose its investment grade status. How do you step away from the politics when it's such a heightened climate right now? So politics are important and policy choices do affect our ratings. But we're not driven by kind of short-term movements or reactions either in markets or from politicians. Our rating at the moment for Italy is Baa2. We do have that under review for downgrade. We put it under review in May. We said in August that we'd probably try and close that review by the end of this month because we're waiting to see what the government's policy choices are. And it's those policy choices that really drive our rating assessment. Which makes your reports, you know, highly political because you are reacting on the back of the government policy. So it's a verdict on those economic policies.
So our ratings are not about whether policies are right or wrong. Our ratings are merely rank orderings of credit risk. They're our assessment of, you know, will you get your money back on full and in time? And to put this in a little bit of context, you know, we're talking about a Baa2 rating, an investment grade rating. Even in the event of an emerging market economy which maybe has a lower rating like Turkey at Ba3, we wouldn't normally expect that kind of rating level to lead to a default. So we're talking about a very safe credit here and possibly a small movement in the rating.
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.